Here are the caveats before I get into all the details of the indictment and the people involved and everything else in that. Here are the caveats about Fani Willis actually prosecuting Donald Trump. Number one, the Georgia legislature passed a law which takes effect in 8 weeks that allows Governor Brian Kemp to remove any district attorney in the state of Georgia from her office, including Fani Willis. So he can just pull her out and replace her with a GOP toady. I mean, we've already seen this happening in other states. So, number one, 8 weeks down the road, it's not impossible that they might do this. I mean, this. By the way, you're saying, well, what about precedent? Won't people be outraged? In December of 1992, step into the Wayback Machine. November of 1992, Bill Clinton beat George Herbert Walker Bush in the election. December, George Bush, the elder, is still president, and his attorney general is Bill Barr. The special prosecutor in that case has brought indictments against 5 allies of George Herbert Walker Bush and Ronald Reagan for the whole Iran-Contra Watergate thing, or not Watergate, the whole Iran-Contra thing, excuse me. George Bush the elder goes to his attorney general, Bill Barr, and says, how can I get out of this? Because they had just subpoenaed his personal diary, and if he turned that over, it would show, or he was concerned that it would show, that he played a role in Ronald Reagan's conspiracy with the Ayatollah Khomeini to hold the hostages in 1980 so he could beat Jimmy Carter. So George Bush is like, how do I get out of this, Bill Barr? And Bill Barr is like, we'll just pardon all the people who are charged right now. And they did. George Herbert Walker Bush on Christmas Eve, 1992, huge screaming headline across the front page of the New York Times saying, Walsh, who was the special prosecutor, claims cover up. That was the headline. Walsh claims cover up. And it shut down the investigation. Well, in this case, it wouldn't be pardoning Trump and everybody because, Joe Biden's not going to do that, and Brian Kemp doesn't have the authority to do that. Instead, you just decapitate the prosecutor. Same effect. And everybody was horrified for a week. And then Bill Clinton got inaugurated, on January 20th, 4 weeks later, and everybody forgot about it. So I think it's entirely possible that Brian Kemp, 8 weeks from now, could remove Fani Willis and decapitate this prosecution. And everybody will, there'll be a lot of huffing and puffing for a month or two, and that'll be the end of that. We'll see. That's one possible scenario. The other possible scenario is that there is a federal law, it's called the removal statute, which says that if a state indicts a federal official, and Trump was a federal official at the time most of these crimes were committed, if a state indicts a federal official for a crime committed while in federal office, that federal official can request that the case be transferred to federal court. Now, in federal court, if Trump is convicted, if he gets reelected, he could pardon himself, number one. Number two, in federal court, there's no minimum mandatory. Number three, in federal court, Trump might draw somebody like Eileen Cannon. In other words, he might draw a judge who he himself appointed, who is inclined to be very favorable toward him rather than the judge and the prosecutor that he has in Georgia right now. Now, Trump tried to do this with the New York State case, with the charges from Alvin Bragg and from Letitia James. And in both cases, it got turned down. In the case with Stormy Daniels, U.S. District Court Judge John Alvin Hellerstein rejected that request and said, no, this is going to stay with the state of New York. So it'll be up to the judge. So we'll see how that plays out. Stay tuned. We're going to do a deep dive on the indictment right after this.